Hello, everyone. You're listening to Digital Builder, a podcast brought to you by Autodesk, made for construction professionals who want to hear from those on the forefront of construction technology. If you're looking for conversations centered around where the industry is going, this podcast is for you. Each episode will feature a conversation with a construction industry leader. Together, we'll dig in on themes related to connected construction and discuss where the future of the construction industry is headed. Now let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Digital Builder. I'm your host, Eric Thomas. This week, we'll be chatting with two inspiring women and hearing their stories of resiliency navigating the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. My guests today are Samiha Shakil, Senior VDC Engineer at Skanska, and Carolina Alvarez, President of J&S Building Maintenance. And while 2020 has come to a close, I think there is much we can learn from today's guests as we plan for 2021 and beyond. Thanks for joining me on the show today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves?
Hey everyone, my name is Samiha. I am a Senior VDC Engineer with Skanska USA Building. I am also a self-proclaimed maker, avid DIYer, and 3D printing enthusiast. I've been with Skanska for a little over 3 years now. Prior to that, I worked with a smaller GC for about a year in quality control. My role at Skanska changes from day to day, but includes coordination, model analysis, reality capture, and a key aspect of my role is to help project teams utilize emerging technology to help deliver a project.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carolina Alvarez. Thank you so much, Eric, for having me on. I am the owner and CEO of J&S Building Maintenance, Inc. We provide post-construction cleanup, commercial janitorial, and COVID-19 disinfection. We're based out of Southern California, and we're currently covering about 10 states and expanding. Started the company about 4 years ago, but I've been in the industry for 17 years. Started in customer service and moved myself up to where I'm at today.
I'm excited for this episode in particular, just because I think your experience and background come from such different directions. Now, for the first segment of today's show, we're going to be discussing the theme of resiliency and how each of my guests navigated the challenges of the ongoing pandemic. They both have an inspiring story to share, which ultimately placed them on our recent 40 under 40 list. Considering 2020 was an especially challenging year, Autodesk decided to go a little further and created a category of 2020 heroes to recognize 7 individuals that truly went above and beyond. And today we have the privilege to speak to 2 of them. So I'd like to start off by giving each of you an opportunity to share your story from the last year and how it ultimately resulted in your 40 under 40 nomination.
Sure. So it was an honor to be nominated and getting the award. I think it was amazing. But when I think of heroes, the reality is the definition of a hero is not to be strong when it's easy, but is to be strong when it's difficult. And 2020 was definitely a difficult year for most of us. When I think of the heroes in my company, I think of my staff in the field. Really, they're the unsung heroes of the pandemic. We have them out there. They have to be able to provide the guidelines for CDC and making sure that everyone on our sites are safe, that they're able to open up again because all the construction sites had to close up immediately. That, week of March, I think it was like the 15th after Friday the 13th. And they were looking at us going, okay, what do we do now? And I didn't have the answers right then and there, but we quickly had to make sure that everybody was able to have their PPE, the chemicals, put plans into action to be able to go back to work. And just like I feel everyone else in our industry, we could not find PPE anywhere. We couldn't get the chemicals. And yes, we had some, but not enough to get us through the next 30, 60 days. So I was driving to San Diego, close to the border, to pick up stuff. I had to drive to Nevada. I drove to Utah. And this is from having friends in the industry who were like, yeah, we have some, come meet us, we'll give it to you. We also had clients that were shutting down, that were not able to open up again. And I wanted to make sure that we were able to keep everyone on board. I didn't want to do layoffs. It was, again, it was like everyone was kind of in that panic mode. And so I was like, okay, well, let's see where we can put so-and-so. Maybe they can go help another person. And like I said, we're in two different industries, it's construction and janitorial. So it's having to like train one group to be like the other and help each other out. But, then we had our project managers looking at us for answers at the same time, saying like, hey, what do we do? What do we need to put in place so that everyone can go back to work? And this literally happened from one day to the other. It was like Friday and then Monday. Hey, Carolina, what are we doing? So it was hard. It was, I felt like I was a student again, doing my research on the coronavirus and, how to keep everyone safe and putting the plans into place. But we definitely struggled those first 60 to 90 days. But once things turned around and we were, hiring more people because we needed the extra people, we wanted to pay it forward. So we know there's a lot of nonprofit organizations that also couldn't get donations and couldn't get the things that they needed, such as PPE, such as consumables. So once I was able to find a supplier that could help us out, I wanted to pay it forward. So I bought a bunch of stuff and started delivering to these nonprofit organizations as well. So, but again, I think the unsung heroes are my staff in the field, really.
I feel the same way, just as I listen to so many different customers and former coworkers when I was still, working for a couple different GCs, in hearing how quickly these pivots really needed to be. It was so unexpected. There really wasn't any framework for any of this. And it's been so impressive to hear everybody's stories who just figured it out. And everything wasn't perfect from the get-go, but the amount of people that jumped in and said, how can I help? How can I get people safe and back to work is just truly impressive. Samiha, can you share how your 2020 unfolded for you?
Absolutely. I just want to say first, hats off to Carolina, you and your team. From my perspective, we're all trying to get back on the job site too. So it's interesting to hear what was going on the other end, from a company like yours trying to get us back to work. So thank you for what you guys have done. And I think, those COVID toolkits that you were kind of describing about, protocols, what we need to do, those were so critical for our industry to get back to work. So for my story is a little different. I know we were just talking about how strange it is to say that like 2020 is behind us and that it's January. But, I think it's really interesting because as a global population, as a country, we all experienced anxiety at the same time. It was unlike anything we've ever experienced. And for me, it was a little personal. In April, I was supposed to have a wedding. And I think around February, I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I didn't want to admit it. And by March, I knew it was like definitely not going to happen. So, I'm frantically making calls, trying to make sure I don't lose all my money. And my mom, she mentions, hey, Samiha, I think you should just get married anyways. And so like 5 days later, we're getting married on WebEx. And I mean, everybody loves the story. I can't believe it happened still. But, my cousin who lived all the way in the UK was able to still officiate just by sitting in his living room. And it was amazing, like to sit on my couch and like see the loved ones and my family members on my TV screen and, have this wonderful moment and still feel very connected with people. And that kind of made me feel like so grateful and so fortunate in that moment that I felt like I needed to bring something positive back into the world to kind of, keep what I've got. So we felt so very fortunate and, we had all this positive energy in our lives. So we just felt we needed to bring that out into the world. So a few days after we got married, I was looking at my university's like Instagram page, and there was a makerspace that I used to work for. And they were printing PPE to distribute to healthcare workers. And I looked at my husband at the time and I was like, well, he's my husband now. But at the time I was looking at my husband and we were like, oh, we have a 3D printer. We could do this. So we did our research, first things first, and spoke to healthcare professionals that we had known personally, did our research and looked at forums. The NIH kind of listed like special, like kind of fast-tracked approved designs for PPE that could be produced via 3D printers or other sort of assembly methods. So we found a design that worked, and overnight we became like a factory and we were printing PPE nonstop, trying to figure out how we can print overnight, like large bulk amounts, working out the logistics of how we would get PPE to people who need it. So in our group, luckily, I do have a lot of friends that were in the healthcare industry. So I was able to just reach out to my personal network and get that PPE to those who had needed it. But there was a larger network growing. If you follow, there was a group called New York City Makes PPE. They were able to print close to 100,000 face shields.
Wow.
Which is incredible. It speaks to just a maker community that came alive at this time. My husband and I printed 500, which feels like a lot, but it's a drop in the bucket of what was really needed at the time. Every night we were hearing like ambulances, we're seeing news reports of not enough PPE for healthcare workers, and it's a scary thing to think that these are the people, essential workers, who are going to bring us through this, and they're not properly equipped. So doing something like this really gave us a lot of purpose. And I found that at that time, so many people were looking for ways to help. It was like a call to action. So stories like mine and Carolina's, there are many of them out there, people who were, donating food to healthcare workers, people who were setting up funds for people who had lost their jobs and needed to feed their families. There was just this collective desire and urgency to help each other out, because this were just unprecedented times. So yeah, it was definitely an experience, but I felt like we all came out a little better through it. So
yeah, I think there's so much that we can kind of learn from those quick pivots that everybody's made, whether it was, in their personal lives, at work, in industry. And you've both made it really clear that most companies have had to make massive changes overnight to keep their teams safe and able to work. Do you have any thoughts about how learning from this pivot might impact how we handle future industry challenges?
I think many of these overnight challenges that companies needed to make was, heavily relied on like the creativity and ingenuity of its employees. Acquiring PPE, like, we've heard Carolina's story, creating new protocols, changing our work safety plans and ensuring social distancing on an active job site. That doesn't happen overnight easily. Our senior leadership began these like town hall meetings that are like just weekly WebEx meetings where we shared sort of like, it was like a knowledge sharing experience. We were able to see what other job sites were doing to maintain social distancing, how to update their safety protocols. And I felt like that experience and being able to share this information and spread good ideas is what helped us spring back into action. It helped us stay connected. And also, like we were talking about, making sure everyone has that information on how to deal with COVID, those toolkits, those protocols, distributing them. That was very like critical to getting back to work. And just, from, I guess, my perspective and like the tech perspective, it really definitely meant we had to just like fully digitize everything that we were doing. In New York specifically, a lot of our project teams went into these like rotational schedules, or, we know plenty of parents whose these school shutdowns have, forced them to work remotely, try to figure out how to get childcare. So without those like traditional means of communication that we were so reliant on, we had to just somehow like seamlessly transition to just digital communication. And, Skanska, we've been just rolling out like, our video conferencing software for a while now. But before that, we maybe had like, various levels of teleconference users. Somebody who maybe needed to set up a conference call once a week is now having to do it like every day and constantly. So definitely shout out to all the IT teams that like needed to support everyone overnight and just kind of get everyone up to date and setting up VPNs, all of that. A lot of work behind that. But I felt like this challenge was a way to kind of test the construction tech that we had already been using or have been hearing about for a while now. So one example that I use a lot is like 360 cameras. We've all know about 360 cameras. We all know how important it is to regularly take those photos and, the importance of job site documentation. But in this case now, you just have one person, going around the job site taking those photos. Within the same day, now you have multiple people walking through a job site virtually. So, we're no longer having to do like large congregations for site walks with owners and clients and, architects. We can kind of limit the amount of people that we need to bring on to a job site. I myself benefited greatly from it because, I was able to look past the past 2 years. We collected over 10,000 photos on the last job site I worked on. And from home, I was able to just like look through the building, do some as-built verification, and it was, you don't miss a beat. And then platforms like BIM 360, so I had to start coordinating a new job this year. And typically coordination is like a war room situation. You get a bunch of people in a room and you talk, you go over issues for hours, and you really rely on having to be there physically with a person. So we needed to find out how to use technology to make sure there was no information lost, no conversations lost, no issues lost. So those sort of platforms we heavily relied on to continue working the way we did.
It's been such an interesting thing to watch the somewhat forced digital transformation a lot of teams are having right now, where they might have had one foot in the water as far as some of the tech, but there was still manual systems in place, still paper. And since construction has traditionally been an in-person boots on the ground industry, that pivot to less on the site is so interesting to watch unfold. And just, COVID restrictions are so different in that environment because you're building, you can't simply go, oh, we're 6 feet away, no big deal.
Yeah.
Like how do you carry a piece of drywall and keep 2 workers 6 feet away? There's so many weird little nuances that you've got to unpack that
Absolutely.
are just brand new.
I agree. I mean, Samiha, everything you've been saying, it's like I'm shaking my head going, yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and from our perspective, we're one of the trades, and we were lucky to have kind of like a younger generation that knows a little bit more about technology. But I have to tell you, I've been in the beginning, a lot of those Zoom meetings with different trades, and some of them are older generation.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh,
it's hard
to get one meeting started. It was interesting. So I think the first 20 minutes was like trying to tell, this person how to set up their Zoom and how to turn on the camera or put it on mute. And so, yeah, I mean, it was very interesting the first few months. I think here and there, you still get that one person, but we still have a lot of that older generation in the construction industry that, hard-headed on no technology, but
I think we've changed their mind this year.
We definitely have.
We definitely changed their mind this year.
Definitely have, yes. Including mine, because I'm very I need to see you in person. I need to do things in person.
Yeah.
Where I have to sit back and go, okay, let's do this, over Zoom or team meeting or whatever it is that we're using.
We need to get a building up, and you can't, like you're saying, can't install a building or build a building if we're all standing far apart. But, we just have to make sure we approach everything with a safe plan. And when we don't need to congregate, we have the tools we need to just make, safer choices.
So Carolina, I heard you're part of a program that's somehow connected to Warren Buffett. Can you tell us what that program is and what the journey has been like going through it?
Yeah, actually, it's so Warren Buffett, he's on the advisory council for a program called Goldman Sachs 10KSB. The program started 10 years ago with the vision of we want to help 10,000 small businesses get a full free program education similar to that of the MBA, and also have resources to capital As you guys know, small businesses, that's probably one of their biggest challenges is having that resources to capital, resources to education, resources nowadays for technology that we don't know about, right? Or maybe we just don't have the funding for it. So funny enough, I heard about the program in 2019, and I think I signed up probably like early 2020, but the whole process takes a few months because you have to qualify for it, and then you have to go through all these interviews. But if you make it, I mean, it's such an amazing program. And I'll tell you one thing, I think because of what 2020 was like, program started in August. I mean, it was like right in the middle of the pandemic. And we were the first cohort to go through it on Zoom versus in person. So also on their side, there was challenges on like, okay, how are we going to do this? Is it going to work? Especially for entrepreneurs and business owners, we're very like in-person group. So it did work. And not only that, I think we had business owners that were they own restaurants and marketing. And, they also, some of them do like convention setups and photographers that they had no business at all at that point. And through the program, I think it's a lot of that, okay, how can we help each other? Backed by Goldman Sachs, which, hello, it's amazing, right? So where Warren Buffett comes into place is that this December, the program hit the 10,000th business to go through the program. And the good news is that I believe it was this week or last week, the Goldman Sachs announced that they're going to do another 10,000 small businesses. So it's still available. You still can sign up for it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be, and I think they saw the need, especially right now. And so when they hit the 10,000 business, they had, I'm sure it was already programmed to be this huge event in person. Instead, it was over a Zoom meeting. And it was Warren Buffett, it was Michael Bloomberg, David Solomon, and Mary from GM. And it was so surreal, first of all, to be in front of them, and to be able to ask questions and hear their advice and their outlook of this is how we started and this is how we run our business today. And each one of them had a different outlook on how to run a very successful business. But like I said, it was very surreal. And I mean, I felt coming out of that meeting, I was like, I'm going to work 12-hour days now. But I think the coolest thing that I heard Warren Buffett say was that he's 90 years old. His partner, Charlie, I believe is 98 years old. And they both go to the office every day.
Wow.
So when I say I came out of that program, I was like, okay, I'm going to be the first one in the office, the last one out, and I'm going to work Saturdays if I have to. So like I said, it was very surreal to be in that group and to hear the stories and what they had to say. And I hope that, whoever's listening now that owns a small business can look into this program because it's great. It's an amazing program.
It sounds like an incredible opportunity to have an audience with some really impactful and successful people. I'm excited to hear a bit about it. And if you happen to have Warren Buffett's phone number, feel free to shoot me that later. I've got some stock question for him. So we've talked about the challenges and struggles of last year. I'd like to hear what each of you think the silver linings are that came out of 2020. And I know we've unpacked some of those already, but I'd be curious to hear just what you think those real strong pros that came out of this last year would be.
So broadly for the industry, I think we've proven that increased adaptability. Construction is known to be an industry that is very slow to change, but I think that we've proved otherwise, and we shouldn't stop here. The door is open, and there is an abundance of technology out there, and it's worth the effort of the research and development to find the right fit. So Skanska, has been on the path of digitization and construction tech for a while. But this year, I just feel like from the ground, I've seen a collective just growth and acceleration in that desire to adapt and use new technology. Whereas I feel like a few years ago, just as a whole, and I think this is just like a common thing in the industry, is that maybe we don't trust the technology that's coming out. And since we've had to rely so much on it in the past year, I think, we're making good strides to continue. And on a personal note, just from printing PPE and like adapting to this new work environment, I think, I've discovered this like new agility in myself. I think, Carolina, you can agree. In 2020, I started off just feeling very lost, a little defeated almost, but, with the support of the people in my life and even the coworkers that I've worked with in this past year, I felt like I've ended this year feeling a lot more focused. I'm fortunate enough to have been able to use this year to reflect on what I've learned in the past and then challenge myself, with this challenge of a pandemic to kind of take those skills further.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And to be honest, I think I was one of those people that were like, technology, but definitely have learned to embrace it. And, like I keep saying, I'm like, I want to be in front of you. I want to see,
Yeah.
I want to be in the project. I want to see what's going on, and have to like learn to step back a little bit and, let technology take what I couldn't do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, we looked into, I was sending out bids through email, and yes, that's technology, but then we started looking at different platforms on that I can just do it all at once, because I wasn't going to be in front of these different GCs, and the opportunity just wasn't there anymore. So I had to look elsewhere for new opportunities. So yeah, I think we're a trade, and for trades, there's still a lot of opportunity for growth in technology. And I can only speak for myself, but being in different groups and speaking with other trades, there's still a need. But not only, and maybe it is out there, they're not aware of it, and I think education, right? Education, it's a huge part of it. And Samiha, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Skanska has a small responsibility to reach out to these trades and say, hey, this is what we can do to help you as well, right? So I think there is a huge opportunity for growth, and to let others grow with you, right? So if
Absolutely.
share the knowledge, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And reach out, definitely reaching out. It's gonna be, I think 2021 is gonna be reaching out and helping those that need it.
Absolutely.
Versus where 2020 we were all trying to catch up in panic mode, and this year is more of like, okay, we know what happened, we know what we need to do now. Let's educate and reach out to those that need it more.
Absolutely. I think you bring up a really good point. Like, we find ourselves in this unique position as sort of the middleman in the whole process of putting together a building. And I think, what Carolina said is very true. And hopefully, as we start to bring on these emerging technologies onto the job site, we kind of collectively all grow together. I think we've noticed this, and I've noticed this in my BIM coordination calls. The tools that we use inspire, I think the trades to do the same. I'm not going to name any names, but one of my trades actually went ahead and bought a 3D scanner recently. And I was so surprised and I was so happy. But, we've been using 3D scanners on our job site. And the draftman that I work with was like, yeah, we bought one because it's just so useful for us. We need something like this. So that was such a win for me. Not that I had anything to do with it, but I felt so proud, that like we're all, kind of going on this journey together. So that's definitely a hope that I have going forward, just for the industry as a whole, because it doesn't make sense if only one player is like very tech savvy, right? Mm-hmm. We all have to kind of do this together for this to work really well.
Yep. Yes.
I agree completely. And whether it's a trade or a subcontractor or anybody else, I think there's a more prevalent plan now to, own your own data, make sure you're being decisive about the technology that you leverage versus just following the GC on a particular project or anything along those lines. Like the more savvy everybody across this space gets with all these different tools, at the end of the day, it boosts outcomes for the owners and the end user in an incredibly positive way. And construction's forever digitized after this year. Like it has to be. Just the basis of how our industry operates has now changed. And like as Samiha said earlier, like construction is slow to change and historically have used crises moments as the catalyst to kind of drive those changes. And I think that 2021 is just a wonderful opportunity to take stock of what worked last year, what didn't, how teams are growing and adjusting, and how they can implement these things in a more meaningful way moving forward. And the cool thing to me is I watch how construction technology changes, the ability to attract new talent in different areas, these flexible working environments, the willingness to use new digital tools opens up an entire new chapter of people that we can attract to the construction industry. So if somebody, say, doesn't live in New York City, but has a keen interest in data and technology, they could serve a really strong function for a general contractor on the data side of things and never actually set foot in an office or on a project site. 2 years ago, that wasn't necessarily something that a company would be interested in, but I think that those conversations are starting now. And in a year, 2 years, 5 years time, I think the space is going to look a lot different than it does right now. So I agree with everything both of you have said. It's
Right.
going to be a lot of fun to see how this
Yeah.
all unfolds.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, speaking to that, I think it we all have to also acknowledge that there's like, when you think construction tech, there's like fancy tools, like I've mentioned a few of them on this call, but so much of when we think about how we operated even 10 years ago, like so much of what we're doing is already in this realm of construction tech. So it's kind of like whether it's, the document management systems that we use, the way we do scheduling, the way we do, anything, reducing paperwork, basically physical paperwork, you're in construction tech. So, we just have to acknowledge that it's not always this crazy, fancy, scary thing. It's, data is so many different things. Yes, analysts and strategy and all that stuff, that'd be very useful. But we, as people who are in this construction environment, are producing data and utilizing data in ways that we are not really cognizant of all the time. So we're in that realm. We're here, let's try to take it further.
So we've talked a lot about last year, and now I'd like to pivot to today and also the future. And I'd be curious to hear a little bit about what's changed the most for you from the day COVID started impacting your lives and your job sites to the new normal of today. I mean, there's still a lot of struggles going on in the industry, but it's interesting to me to take stock of like day one when work from home mandates were implemented and job sites were shut down to where we're sitting today.
I think for us, Eric, it's kind of like a silver lining that we talked about earlier. When you think of final clean, we are the final trade. And I always joke around that we're always the last call because they forgot to put in a budget for cleaning, or if they did, they still forgot to call us. And it's like, hey, can you clean a full hotel tomorrow? Is that okay? And so I always joked around about, us being the last call. And because of the pandemic, and a lot of people and a lot of companies have looked at the pandemic as a crisis. For us, it was an opportunity. Now we're getting project managers and GCs. We're the first call. They're starting a project, they need us there. Why? Because we need to disinfect. We need to make sure that CDC guidelines are being followed, that their other trades are following those guidelines, that if it's a construction job where there's still residents living in them, we have to make sure they're also safe. So for us, I think the biggest change is being the first call, whereas to being the last call. So that's been, I love it.
It's a solid business model pivot there. I appreciate that.
Can that be the new standard just going forward?
Yes.
For me, I think, funny enough, I think there has been some changes just in terms of like job sites and kind of seating arrangements and the workplace. But for me, it almost similar to Carolina is like this is an opportunity to kind of wield, I've been talking about construction tech for a couple of years now. So to kind of showcase and like prove what we've been doing and how that, by investing in the tech that we have been using, we've actually all along been, proactive instead of reactive is what, construction is, like you were saying, known for. So I found myself very fortunate not to have to, invest or ask to invest in new technologies, because at my disposal, I had so much that would already let me continue doing my job, given the certain circumstances. So I thought this, was a time to kind of prove what VDC and in our department can do in construction.
Yes, I love what opportunities are, laying ahead. Again, I think that if you have the knowledge and you have the tools, we need to share that with others. Yes. Because your projects can only be as successful as your trades are.
Yeah.
So when you have teams working together, whether you're in the same company or not, that's going to be your successful projects. Those are going to be the ones that are going to win awards and so on. So yes, I'm going to go back to, share your knowledge. I think 2021 is going to be working together, sharing your knowledge, see what we can give back so that we can bring the economy back and everyone back to work.
Absolutely.
So do either of you have any predictions that you'd be comfortable sharing about the future of the construction industry? So, of course, after 2020, we saw that, so many companies are much further along in their digital transformation. And as we'd spoken about earlier, some of that journey was voluntary, some otherwise due to just the state of the pandemic. But I'd be interested to hear where each of you think the next big change might show up in how we work in construction.
So I think I'm going to say something that's a little broad, but I think could be applicable to many things. So data strategy, we kind of briefly talked about that. We have to, I think as a whole in the industry, understand that data and this kind of information can help us get ahead of the game and be very proactive in that the next obstacle or the next challenge, God forbid, never a pandemic again, doesn't, completely, throw our progress or, we can still stay on track regardless of what obstacles come our way. And, I'd say just with Skanska, I don't think this is something that's this current transformation. There's definitely a progression of our data strategy over the years. And, we've always valued that information, but I kind of touched upon this earlier, is I think on a not a high level, but on just a project teams ground level, just understanding the data and how useful it is to us on the job site. And yes, we could use data for future projects and bidding and risk management and whatnot. But I think real-time data on our job sites is very important for us to learn how to wield. So for example, I'm really interested in production tracking, just real time, digitizing the way we track progress on a job site. And that sort of information is very powerful because you can really see trends in the work that's being done on your job site. You can kind of predict, okay, listen, I'm not really meeting the work to be complete that I need to be at this point to meet deadlines, or, maybe you could even use that for scheduling to see what jobs, what trades you can bring on site sooner because some of the work is being done sooner. So it's data is such powerful. It's such a powerful weapon or just a tool for us on a job site. So I'm hoping, with all the construction tech that we're seeing coming out in the future, a lot of that takes that data that's going on every day on the job site and puts that into our hands in a more I guess, easy to digest way.
Samiha, I feel like you've been sitting in on all of my meetings for the last 3 to 6 months. So I'm working on some research right now that I can't really share a bunch about, but very tied into data and the importance of our industry. And to steal from Nathan Wood from Spectrum AEC, he said something like, a lot of contractors these days think they have a lake of data, but they actually have a sewer because they have all this information, but they're not necessarily leveraging it in a way that's as meaningful as it possibly could be. And so I think the future of construction tech in 2021 and beyond, I think really does tie into how people use their data and really mindfully assess what they're capturing and then take stock of why. It's going to be pretty interesting to see what meaningful improvements companies are going to be able to make once they kind of up level their game in that data conversation.
Yes, I agree. I mean, Samiha, you touched on so many great points. I think, again, I'm going to go back to knowledge is power. Having that knowledge and being able to access these tools that we put in place, or maybe that they were already there, but nobody's using them, or they're just not, and it starts on the top. If your management over here doesn't want to, then everyone else on the bottom is just not going to follow. So I think it's amazing to think we can we don't need an office anymore. We don't need to come to the office because now we can access all these amazing tools online. We have platforms and we have so much that we can do anywhere in the world, really, that we were, right? I mean, I remember, I don't know what month it was. I was like, hey, the kids are not in school. I can take my computer and work anywhere. We went to Big Bear and I was like, hey, well, this is where we're going to do school for the next week, and we were able to do that. Like that's amazing. Not forever. I don't want to do that forever. But it's the knowledge is power. I think that Absolutely. We're going to see a lot more in the digital world for sure.
Absolutely. I think my dream is to see more power users. I think I got into construction tech or VDC, we'll say. So I got into VDC because I came from a GC that we were so far from construction technology. Like, it is what it is. It's a smaller company. It's a big overhead to take on some of the tools. But I did see the need for it. And, once I joined VDC, it seemed like this was amazing. Like, look at all this stuff I could do. And like, I really hope we can all as an industry, come up to speed and do this together. And I would love to say that, like, I hope that companies, across the board focus on training their employees, whether it doesn't have to be on how to use a 360 camera. It doesn't have to be on how to use a laser scanner, but it could be various workflows that will save you time, because we shouldn't have, processes that like bog us down. Everyone's time is very valuable, especially in a fast moving industry like ours. So I hope as a whole, like, we all just, focus on building power users within our industry and then kind of spreading that information and collectively just kind of moving forward together.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of opportunity to unpack in that space as well, and in informing people about the why behind some of the technology and showcasing really clearly to who's going to be using it, the positive impacts it's going to be on their work, instead of framing it as yet another tool that they have to engage with is going to be really important moving forward. So I have one more question for each of you before we end this week's episode, and I've asked it to each of our guests, and it's been pretty entertaining to see the range of answers I've gotten. So can you tell me what is one tool you will always carry in your toolbox, no matter what type of project you're working on? Carolina, now how about you go first?
Well, your past speakers had some amazing tools, and I'm jealous. But mine is pretty simple, but I use it almost on every project. It is my phone. It's the measuring tool in my phone, because a lot of the times what we need to do is to get square footages. And hey, I don't have a nice laser tool, unfortunately, but I do have my phone.
Yes.
And with that phone, I can measure, I can take pictures, I can get into my Dropbox, I can get into every application that I need without even having to go back to the office. I sit in my car and I do everything at once. So I can't live without my phone. Before I used to take like a bag or a backpack with like my notebook and measuring tape and this and that. And now it's just one little thing and I love it.
Caroline, you have me like aggressively shaking my head because I was pretty much going to say the exact same thing. My phone or my iPad, either. If I don't have my phone, if I don't have my iPad, my phone is good enough because I can access my entire job sites, like, documentation, every drawing, specs, everything I need from my phone. Like you're saying, I could take photos. It's everything I need in a little compact, tool. So I also, think about where things are going. Like the new iPhones, the new iPads have like LiDAR technology in them. So like, do I even need a laser scanner anymore? I mean, I'm just saying, I'm sure it's definitely not the same, but right. I think, what we're saying is that like some of the tools that we interact with every day, like I'm sure when they're installing, I don't know what the purpose of installing the LiDAR cameras on the iPads or the phones were, but the other day, just to give you guys like a real life scenario is, my current project is in a hospital. And so getting access to some of the rooms is like a little bit of a logistics, effort. And we can't always get access to some of the rooms. So, if we're in there 1 week, I'm not sure when the next time we'll be able to get in there. I mean, it's an active, hospital as well. So, now I've got this laser scanner on my iPad that I could just go in and like scan the room. And then I don't have to go back into that room again. And I don't need to go back into that room again because I have all that information stored, on my iPad. I could share it with the project team, share it with all my subcontractors, done. So definitely what we've already got, our phones, our iPads, these are the best tools that we've got right now.
It's been interesting watching the trajectory just since I've joined the workforce from phone being a distraction and something that's not necessarily welcome at your desk, like, from the employee perspective to go, oh gosh, he's on his cell phone again, to now it's an absolute critical tool for most people, even just down to Slack and communicating with people in a pretty streamlined way. Yes. And like I'm deliberate about turning my phone off at some point in the evening just because it's too easy to get too plugged into it sometimes. But I'm thankful for the flexibility it provides me and my responsiveness and things along those lines. So I'm in line with both of you on this one. So
yeah.
All right. So as we come to a close, if our listeners have any questions for either of you, can you share how they can connect with you?
So if you would like to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Samiha Shakil. Please feel free to send me a message if you'd just like to talk about construction tech or any experiences that you would like to share. And also keep a lookout for my blog post coming up soon.
And yes, the same. You can always find me on LinkedIn, Carolina Alvarez. You can also find my company, JNS Building Maintenance, Inc. Feel free to reach out on my email, calvarez@jsbminc.com, and also our website, jsbminc.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Again, small businesses that have any questions, please reach out.
All right, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us on this episode of Digital Builder. For more stories from our 40 under 40 nominees, make sure you take a look at the Digital Builder blog. There's a ton of new content on there every day, and it's absolutely worth checking out. As always, if you want to reach out with any questions or would like to be a guest on a future episode, you can find me on LinkedIn or via Twitter at builder_digital. I've already gotten some thoughtful messages about the show and would absolutely love to hear from you. On that final note, goodbye.
You've been listening to Digital Builder. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening with Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to give a quick rating of the show. Simply tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves, and then you're done. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.